Hey neighbor, it's 7 on Sunday. Trends happen in music just like they would in the world of fashion. What emerges as a popular new style can quickly fade away, only to bounce back years or even decades later with a new generation. Music genres are never truly dead if someone out there is still creating it. Like sure, the PS2 server shut down back in 2014, but there's still 5 people playing Call of Duty 3 online, so you tell me who's dead. Last time I covered these 7 genres, so if you haven't seen that video, check it out after you watch this one, link below. Now we're gonna talk about 7 more styles of music that disappeared from the public eye. Do these dead genres deserve to have a comeback? Or are some things better left to rest in peace? Another road in another time, like a novel from the 5 and 9. Escapism is one of the biggest reasons we connect so deeply with music. For Americans in the late 70s into the 80s, life was changing at a rapid pace, so it only makes sense that a genre preaching the complete opposite of the corporate lifestyle broke out in a major way. Yacht rock typically refers to the era where artists like Jimmy Buffett, Hall & Oates, Kenny Loggins, Christopher Cross, and Toto conquered the airwaves with a seemingly endless supply of soft-rocking tropical paradise hits. I'd almost call it more of an aesthetic, but the subgenre combined elements of jazz fusion, R&B, soft rock, funk, and pop to create a nautical atmosphere. There actually wasn't an official word for the movement beyond soft rock until 2005, long past the genre's peak, when the online mockumentary series Yacht Rock coined the term and offered a satirical look into the lives of these aging hitmakers. Parrotheads quickly spread the gospel of Jimmy Buffett under this affectionate term, rallying all margarita-sipping sailors worldwide to remember the good old days of easy-breezy soft rock under the sun. Unlike some of the genres I chose, Yacht Rock never saw a major return to the charts. Modern bands like Young Gun Silver Fox fill the void nicely enough for fans desperate for more music in this vein, but for many, the smell of ocean salt is a fond but fading memory. An island of sweaty parrotheads might evoke a certain, shall we say, smell? But for those of us not looking to smell like the inside of a salty Birkenstock, thankfully we have today's video sponsor, Scentbird. Scentbird is a game-changing fragrance subscription that lets you choose a new designer perfume each month delivered to your doorstep for just 17 bucks. I'm so done with overpriced cologne in the hundreds of dollars because with Scentbird, it's easy to mix and match as you up your game and activate olfactory senses you didn't even know you had. Their growing collection has over 600 scents, with each file including a 30-day supply, which, may I add, I've been loving the fragrances I got this month. I feel fancy just trying to pronounce these, but my 2 favorites were Oso Ver's Joga and Sanctuary's Cross River Gorilla. Both of these are fresh, earthy scents that really complement my vibe. Instead of dumping $500 on a full bottle of something you might not even love, why not try Scentbird for 55% off with coupon code ARTV? This is an insanely good deal, considering they carry everything from mainstream brands like Versace and Prada to indie labels like Heretic or Skylar and probably a bunch of other brands I've never heard of. Click the link below to get 55% off with code ARTV, and thank you again to Scentbird for supporting the channel by sponsoring this video. Everything you say to me takes me one step closer to the edge, and I'm about to break. Alternative metal's little brother nu metal experienced a meteoric rise in the late 90s and dominated into the early 2000s. It's common to throw new in front of a genre tag if it makes a comeback or updates the original sound for a new generation, but nu metal was the first of its kind to make itself impossible to ignore. Korn, Linkin Park, Mudvayne, Limp Bizkit, Slipknot. These are some of the biggest mile markers of the era that led by example with aggressive riffing, turntable scratching, genre fusion, and angry, sad lyrics about alienation tailor-made for the youths.
Youths? Nu
metal appealed to a wide audience thanks to massive exposure from MTV and the radio. Listeners stuck with it through the mid-2000s, even as some of the genre's biggest bands started to change lanes to avoid being pigeonholed. Oversaturation led to a decline in originality within the genre, and I know you already know if you're a fan, it was basically he said, she said bullshit that gave us all listener fatigue. People were growing up and out, either to the mainstream top 40, hip-hop, or pop-punk and alternative rock. Rock, which many, including me, credit with toppling nu metal's chokehold on the industry. Some of these OG bands maintain a dedicated fanbase to this day, despite the genre's decline. While newer faces like Bring Me the Horizon and Reina Sawayama incorporate nu metal elements into their own style, proving that it wasn't just a fluke, it was a big influence on the broader rock and metal landscape. New Jack Swing was a dominant genre that caught fire in the late 80s and early 90s as it blended elements of R&B, hip-hop, and dance pop into an innovative sound. This sound was carried almost entirely by black artists, as calling cards for the movement were its infectious beats, catchy melodies, and the fusion of electronics with more traditional instrumentation. One of the key figures fueling New Jack Swing was Teddy Riley, producer and writer for many of the era's biggest success stories. Riley once said, "I define the term as a new kid on the block who's swinging it." Simple enough. The genre spawned several prominent artists who defined the era's sound. Bobby Brown, Janet Jackson, Keith Sweat, and later the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson, who incorporated elements of New Jack Swing into his music in the early 90s. When the king of pop taps in, you're gonna see other artists starting to attempt to emulate the success, which led to an increasingly formulaic approach and the downfall of New Jack Swing. Even with the genre's disappearance, the influence of New Jack Swing can still be heard in modern R&B and hip-hop, as artists continue to draw inspiration from its grooves and production techniques with an updated twist. Industrial music is probably something you associate with the late 80s into the 90s because of the success of trailblazing bands like Skinny Puppy, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, KMFDM, and of course, Ministry. The genre's roots are actually planted firmly in the late 70s, long before its peak, laying down some of industrial's primal instincts by the use of abrasive noise, pulsating electronics, and a focus on themes of dystopia, technology, and societal decay. Underground dance clubs and raves ironically played a massive role in industrial's mainstream breakthrough. Albums like The Downward Spiral and Psalm 69 sold millions, while smaller acts managed to successfully have their own minor breakout stories too. The music industry of the aughts boosted genres like EDM, post-grunge, and indie rock, with many of the pioneering bands of the genre either breaking up or shifting their sound away from the industrial scene. Industrial music is a weird one because currently there's not, at least to my knowledge, much going on at all beyond acts like Ministry, still going strong, new album 2024, and a few artists that are molding traces of the genre into their own identity.
We said you a gangster, but you never nothing. We said you a winkster, and you need to stop, right?
Gangsta Rap is one of the most well-defined subgenres of hip-hop, gaining prominence in the late 80s and becoming a cultural phenomenon throughout the entirety of the 90s. This is where rap became known for storytelling, with rappers spitting gritty, explicit lyrics about the harsh realities of life on the streets for marginalized communities. Gang violence, drug dealing, and racial politics were almost always in the crosshairs of the rhymes, as some of hip-hop's most iconic figures debuted in this era. Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Nas, 50 Cent. I could keep going, but they were onto something huge, and labels like Death Row Records emerged to bridge the gap between hip-hop and the major labels. The early to mid-2000s was gangsta rap's commercial peak, with 50 Cent leading the pack with his insanely popular 2003 album Get Rich or Die Tryin'. Rappers like Lil Wayne, Gucci Mane, and The Game also hit the jackpot by rapping about similar topics, but these big wins ultimately created too many wanksters, as 50 would say. The decline in gangsta rap's chart success was maybe, probably not actually, thanks to the growing backlash against the perceived glamorization of violence and criminal activities by parents and conservatives, but realistically, I think the death of gangsta rap kinda coincided with the release of 50 Cent and Kanye West on the same day in 2007.
Just wanna break you down so badly. We'll have to over everything you say.
I'm confused. Is pop punk dead, resurfacing, or on the decline? You'd recognize its core mission statement by the catchy melodies, relatable lyrics about growing up, and a blend of punk rock's radiant energy with a more radio-friendly spark. Green Day, Offspring, Fall Out Boy, Sum 41, and the All-American Rejects were a few of many artists charting multi-platinum albums and scoring worldwide hits as pop punk evolved and remained at a peak for longer than most would have predicted. If Green Green Day's 1994 album Dookie was the jumping on point. Maybe it was the very idea of a new decade coming around the 2010s that killed it. The club boom swayed mainstream listeners over to the likes of EDM and trap, while rock nerds began ingesting indie rock like it was the second coming of Christ. Now I know what you're wondering, what about the 2020s, John? The Revival, MGK, Willow, Avril Lavigne, YUNGBLUD? How do I put this nicely? Nostalgia's cool, but it helped them how, exactly? No one's expecting one band to reinvent the wheel, but maybe don't copy the drum patterns, vocal affectations, and power chords so blatantly in the next comeback? A mainstream return to pop punk lasted all of a year and was much more about the aesthetic than the music quality, while the lyrics of similar artists to MGK felt like they were forcing their foot in the door to ride the wave before smashing eject.
Eject, 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 eject.
Pop punk desperately needs a facelift, and maybe that will happen sooner rather than later, with new albums from titans like Blink-182, Neck Deep, and Sum 41 on the horizon. Disco music had its rise and fall during the 1970s, making it one of the most iconic but most short-lived genres in music history. Disco quickly gained mainstream popularity after taking off in the underground dance scene, becoming ubiquitous with the societal norms of the era. You knew you were in the disco zone when you were hearing syncopated percussion, a blend of various electronics, four-on-the-floor beats, and the frequent use of brass horns and light guitar. Donna Summer, Bee Gees, ABBA, Casey and the Sunshine Band. Disco was breaking new talent left and right, so clubs and the radio ran with it a little too hard. First of all, there was a flood of disco records. Everyone was doing it. Even the big bands were trying to find a way to make disco cool, but in their style. Secondly, profits were down because disco was expensive to produce because this was a producer-heavy genre. The shareholders were, of course, not happy, and we can't have that now, can we? The public was seasick from the non-stop groove, and just like magic, it went away for almost a decade before getting a quick late 80s revival by artists like Kylie Minogue, before springboarding a new disco movement that rode a more futuristic wave in the late 90s and 2000s. Thanks for watching SOS, and thanks again to Scentbird for sponsoring the video. Check them out below. I appreciate you guys using my links when I have them. Before you go, take a split second to tap subscribe and like, and maybe drop a comment and join the conversation. Don't miss my other video on dead music genres right here, and I'll see you next time.